There, it's rolling. Welcome back to Creepy Car CineVlog Reviews. It's so good to be back in here. So I just got out of seeing War for the Planet of the Apes, and I really wish I was wearing my Planet of the Apes t-shirt right now. I love these movies. I really am a sucker for these movies. I think I've said it more than once. I love this franchise. One portion of the concept, but because of the commentary that goes with it. I really like what they do with this commentary. The first, 5 films are definitely about social prejudice, and just seeing what humanity would be like in the complete opposite if it was all dominated by apes and stuff like that, and just seeing the whole social class of it all just being portrayed by the apes and everything. And that's what I really like about it, about this franchise. They're just literally taking society and turning it on its head and saying, this is what it's like in the opposite effect. It's literally like holding a mirror in front of you and saying, yo, look what's going on here. In terms of the franchise as a whole, here's a quick count. And I'm talking about the old ones as well, because I have a great soft spot for the old ones. First movie, love it. It's a classic. You can't go wrong with it. It's one of the scripts written by Rod Sterling, and they use that as a basis for later drafts. And they had to change it a couple of times for budgetary reasons and because there were too many complex ideas. That just stands on its own. It's just worth seeing. The second one, there's some nice ideas I like with it, especially with the mutants. On the other side of the world and everything, and the fact that their own little cult. It's a very strange film, and it's one that I'm actually tempted to do a vaulting episode on. It probably might end up being one, because there's just so much material to riff on and talk about and discuss. And that's what I like. I like riffing, I like talking about and discussing, the main meat of what works and what doesn't work in this kind of movie. And it's funny because every time I show this, friends of mine, they always say, oh my god, that's awful, I don't want to continue with the franchise. And yet, when I offer Escape to the Planet of the Apes, they're like, okay, we're hooked, we're back in the franchise, we're good. And Escape is always the one that fans really love the most, and that's the big game changer. I'm not going to say too much about the plot of Escape from the Planet of the Apes, but just to give you the skinny, two of the apes travel back in time to the 1970s, and they're turned into superstars and everything. And just the way they do it is so beautifully done. They start off, on top of the world, and then things get downhill midway after a certain thing happens. Then there's the fourth one, which is honestly my favorite out of the bunch. I actually like the unrated cut more, for a variety of reasons. I like how it goes darker. I like how it goes into the apes' revolt and the rebellion and everything. Silly idea, yeah, but it's just executed so well. That's what I like about it. I love the original ending and just how it goes balls to the wall and how dark it gets. The ending of the theatrical cut, no. No. I'm really against that, and You go from Caesar, we are going to take over humanity for what they done to us, and then, no. Change my mind, we're just going to save humanity. Yeah, that's fine. But it's the birth of the Planet of the Apes! The fifth one I haven't seen in a long time, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. And it's not one I always remember very fondly, and probably a couple good reasons why. I remember that one being very slow and very clunky in spots. Maybe the extended cut is, better-ish. But like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen it, and that's why I always, keep holding off on. Because I just remember it being so slow and boring, and again, it has some good ideas that I do like. I like, how they're all in this very primitive state, and they're trying to coexist with humans, but there's others that think otherwise, and I think that's the only thing I really like about the movie. Everything else... Oh yeah, Paul Williams is an orangutan. Those are the only good things about the movie. You have the concept in play there, and Paul Williams as an ape. Those are really the only good things of the movie. I just remember that one being, slow and boring, and... I don't remember really hating it as much as, like, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, but I think that one just plays itself way too safe. I might have to watch it again. But I just remember being very slow. So, the Tim Burton movie, I did a whole episode on. You don't need to recap my thoughts. But with this whole new rebooted franchise, I was very skeptical at first, and then I saw, Rise, and it convinced me wrong. I felt like, okay, this is a good start. It's not perfect. There's things I do have problems with, but just the way they're playing these things around and showing, how this revolt led to be under certain certain things, and just seeing where it goes, it's actually quite interesting. The second movie, however, I actually hold in high regard as the better film. I'd say skip Rise of the Planet of the Apes and go straight to Dawn. That's the better movie. Because you actually get to see... it's pretty much Disney's Pocahontas, but done better, and actually done right. You do see reasons for the prejudice between apes and humans. You have the humans trying to get more power and electricity, but it's on the apes' territory. And so it's like, okay, maybe we can try and, coexist and help out and stuff. Nope. That don't work. And it leads to a lot of great action sequences in the second half. Gary Oldman's really good in it. I definitely say, from my perspective, skip and just go straight to the second one. It's the better one. But in regards to War for the Planet of the Apes, I'll put it this way: if this movie, if this rebooted Apes franchise is going to be a trilogy, I'm going to say right here and right now, if it is going to be a trilogy, I heard they're going to do more of these movies, which, okay, fine. I'm just going to see where it goes. But you know what? The previous movies did that. When they came to a point where you said, okay, it can end right here, they found another idea and they flew with it. And as ridiculous as it was, you were sort of interested in where it could go. This is exactly what this movie is. It's well executed. It's well paced. It's a good sequel, and it's a great cap-off to, if they're going to do a trilogy, which I hope to God they do, actually, especially with franchise fatigue kicking in, I really hope that this is the final one, because they ended it on a solid note. Not a perfect note, but at least good enough to say, if you're just going to stick with these 3 films in this franchise, hallelujah, you did it. You made a good third movie. I really don't want to get into plot details, because I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to spoil anything. So I'm only going to talk about things that I liked in fragments, because I think it's better just going in completely blind and not knowing what's going to happen. But if you just want the skinny, I'm just going to pick apart certain things that I thought worked for me. I don't really have too many negatives, except maybe when they're referencing the original, but whatever. So in this one, Caesar's in hiding, and apparently a very traumatic event happens, and it causes him to go after this colonel, played by Woody Harrelson. And so this whole trek, he's sort of going along, and he's having this little personal journey, which I thought was really great. Because in the previous 2 movies, he's slowly starting to accept his responsibility as a leader and trying to either help these apes or show that we have dominance over these people, we can take them over! And it really ties into the previous movie, and this is why I say Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is worth seeing before this one, because it really shows Caesar's struggle as a leader. Because here he is, because in the previous movie, he was trying to understand what it was, trying to control social situations and things out of their reach and how they should accept them. And when that didn't work, it clearly shows that now he's in the vicinity of just protecting his people instead of just fighting for the sake of survival. Well, fighting for the sake... He is fighting for survival, but he's doing it under protection. He doesn't want to kill people in regards to, exterminate. It's more for the case of, okay, if you're going to come after us, then by all means, go ahead. But you know what? We're just trying to live. Screw you, man. And that's really the tone that they're trying to get across here. He's doing this for the sake of protection. He's not in it just to wipe out the entire planet and dominate it. He just wants to live, along with his, folks and followers, which is kind of interesting. Because you come to this one here, and now he's trying to understand the responsibility of being a leader. So here he is, trying to, either go after this colonel for what he did to him, or just try to guide these folks to a better place to hide and let the humans, you know, just sort of destroy themselves and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. That I liked. I thought that was interesting, because you have the Caesar character that's come full circle here. He's trying to debate whether he should be a good leader or a good war general. And when he finally sees and experiences what it's like being that other side of the mirror, the really deep into war and not understanding the means of compassion or sympathy or, you know, anything that's the opposite of being war and generalistic, it's very interesting, because you're starting to get into his head and realize that that's not the person he wants to be. It's not exactly what he doesn't even want to go near, and that's what he's afraid of. And they do that so cleverly in this film. The Colonel, played by Woody Harrelson, loved him. I flat out loved him. I'm probably going to reference this a lot, but when I saw his character, he kind of reminded me of Marlon Brando's performance in Apocalypse Now. He's just so embedded in war and creating this whole, you know, tribe and cult of his own that is also in for survival, but in different measures, like really, really different measures. He's the guy that just really doesn't give a care. He doesn't care about anything. It's just all about him, and everyone is sort of there by his own means. And that's really interesting. In terms of what it adds to the film, I don't think it's pro-war or anti-war. I think it's up there with, say, Full Metal Jacket, Bridge of the River Kwai, and Apocalypse Now, where it's showing the horror of war and how it can break someone, instead of, you know, war is evil! That's not the case here, and I like that. I really like how it's showing into the horrors of what, you know, war can do to someone. It can really damage someone. It can really break someone. And so when they introduce this Colonel character and the baggage he has, and what turned him into such a twisted monster, it's not a case where it's literally spelling out, you know, war is bad, blah, 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 blah. It's a case of, no, it's showing what it does to someone, how it can damage somebody. And the fact there's all these mindless soldiers there that have little to no personality, not even a line, which is kind of interesting. And I just love how they went with that angle. The fact that he's there to like, mash mind control and stuff. Woody barely has any lines, and he comes off as so scary and intimidating that when you see him on screen, he's literally the boss. And I love how they introduce him. In his very first sequence, there's a bit where they're trying to invade, like, the caves and stuff. And I'll try not to ruin too much. But there's a bit where him and Caesar just lock eyes just as the Colonel's about to, you know, go up. And the camera just locks on their close-up so much. And then it's on Caesar, and it slowly pans away to show what the Colonel did. And it's like, oh, it's down. Oh my God, he went too far. And then that gets echoed later on when the Colonel's explaining what turned him into the war monster that he is. And that's when you start realizing this is what could lead to Caesar. Because in the previous movie, there was a character named Koba who was all about, you know, exterminate the humans, blah, blah, blah. And when you see a human version of that in this movie, it's really scary when you think of it. This guy that is just there for the sake of survival. He has only people there as, you know, for the sake of mindless drones, and has only used them for his own biddings, just to close himself off from society. There's this impending ticking clock, which feels a little weightless, but there is a sense of a ticking clock coming in, where all these folks are coming in after him, and they're like, oh, well, in that case, we're just going to build this giant-ass wall, and we're going to bomb you all to hell. And that's, the way they went, that is actually kind of interesting. And again, that's why when I'm referencing this movie, I'm comparing it to, like, again, Apocalypse Now, Bridge on the River Kwai, Full Metal Jacket. Those are the basic three that come to mind in terms of war movies. Well, I'm not a big fan of war films, but when it's interesting and when it's examining the aspect of war in sort of a certain way, I'm open to it. You know, I'm fine with that. Hacksaw Ridge was fine, even though that was really more of an inspirational story. But again, when it's going into the psychological aspects, that's what I like the most about it. I like how it's showing how it can damage someone's humanity, how it literally makes them insane and crazy. And it's great here, and it works so perfectly in certain scenes. Like, there's one where something happens to the Colonel, and he's begging Caesar, do something to me. I don't care what it is. I don't want to suffer. And instead, what Caesar does, he gives him that choice. That's brilliant. I won't say what it is, but just the way it works, it's so emotional. It's perfectly executed. That's what I love about this. It's on paper it seems hokey. On maybe by another writer, when they do these things, it does seem kind of cliched. But it's executed so well, and that's what I love about these movies. You could just literally look at like a little frame from the very first film from 1968 and be like, oh, they're just people in makeup, that's not great. But when you actually sit down and see the film, it's a horrifying thought. The idea that they cast these Shakespearean actors, I'm not kidding here, they actually did work in Shakespeare, British stage kind of troupe. When you see these actors, act as, very civilized beings, the whole idea that these, apes are so evolved to the point they're even more intellectual than we are, with their own laws, their own rules, and their own wit. So it's a battle between ape law and humankind in question, and that's where the frightening aspect comes in. It's not the makeup or anything. No, it's the execution and how it's pulled off that makes it so beautiful. And that's the same case here. There are certain moments that, if they went this direction, it could have been cliche. It could have been hokey. Hell, there's a new character they toss on that looks like a combination between Gollum and Yoda. Who apparently speaks, but he's like, oh, bad ape, bad ape. And he's not Jar Jar Binks irritating. There's moments where he kind of does get a little degrading, but at least some of the bits he does are kind of funny. It's obvious that they're trying to put in comic relief to like lighten up some of the harder spots, and they'll do that in a war movie. Stuff like I think in what's an example? Apocalypse Now. Like one of the soldiers is like very sex crazy or something like that, and they make a joke or a stink about that, or one of them adopts a dog, and it's like, oh, they're really the dog, they're taking care of the dog. That's great. And at least I didn't mind the comic relief too much. I saw this movie with an audience, and they laughed at the parts where it was funny. There's a scene where, like, they're trying to dig this hole, because they're underground. They're trying to find a way to, like, get into this little camp. There's a scene where the orangutan Maurice is trying to, nudge him to get him on his back. He's like, no, I'm here. Okay. He's like I said, he's pretty much a mutated CGI version of Yoda and Gollum, if he had the personality of Don Knotts, and I didn't mind that. Some of it can be a little degrading, especially with the design of the character, but for what it is, I was fine with that. Andy Serkis is back as Caesar. He's the king of motion capture, and he does great here. And I really don't want to talk more. I don't want to talk any more about this movie because it will just really go into spoiler territory. And I know there's stuff they showed in trailers like, oh, they have a human child with him, blah, 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 and yeah, that works pretty well. That could have gone a very cliched route. But it works fine to its advantage, because it's playing off of Caesar's humanity. He's sort of questioning, does he want to go with this whole revenge plot, or does he want to just hightail it and just sort of let the war be as it is and not have any part of it? And that's where it gets interesting. It really does. And I felt there were moments where they used the girl character pretty well, not in the state where it was like cliched. They could have gone a cliched route and made her a damsel in distress, and they don't. Thank God they don't. Hell, there was one person on Twitter complaining about, like, oh, she says one line, blah, 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 and, a damsel in distress. That doesn't frickin' happen. Shut up. You want to go rant and rave about a movie, at least see it first. That's what really bugs the hell out of me, But no, in regards to summer films this year, I definitely say this one was this one's really worth checking out. It's up there with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man Homecoming, and then definitely this one, War with the Planet of the Apes. Those are 4 essential good movies there. I know Captain America, not Captain America. I know Captain Underpants is pretty good, but some people don't like over silly things, but I didn't mind it. But I think in terms of how we're just midway into the summer and things are starting to pick up a little bit, I really do hope it caps off in a good way. At the very most, this movie really does. If you're looking for something just explosive, but at least has an intelligent mind, by all means, go see this movie. It's worth checking out. And like I said, I really want to get into like the aspects of what really makes this work, and some of the complex kind of stuff, but I'd have to go into spoilers, and that would be kind of unfair. And especially with the age of the internet now, we can search these things up and, learn about what happens and be prepared. But in terms of what they do and what I wish I want to talk about, which I can't say, it does add some interesting aspects and certain parallels. It feels like as if they're connecting this to the previous movies, and that's good. That's really good. At least what I can say is that there are certain little bits of like throwbacks and homages to like the very first film, which honestly do work. There's a great thing with like the scarecrows in the first movie that comes into play here that's kind of utilized pretty well in a more horrific state. So if you were going to connect that movie with this one, you could understand, okay, why they had scarecrows out in the first film and in that weird X kind of form. The stuff with, naming certain people and how certain things are as they are, they do a pretty good job of that. What really, there are there's a couple of groaners here and there that I kind of got a little about. Not really like references to the first film, but just like, the obvious kind of things. Like at one point they're seeing graffiti on a wall and one of them says, "Apocalypse now." Like, okay, you did that earlier in the first sequence where all the soldiers have like, bedtime for Bonzo and stuff like that in their helmets, and at least that worked because it wasn't too cheesy. It felt like something out of Apocalypse Now, Born to Kill's written on their helmets. But when you have stuff like that where it's just graffiti, man, they even push it further at one point where they're going to a camp and there's a slogan that says, "The only good Kong is a dead Kong." I'm sorry, did you see this year's Nom Kong? Those are the only nitpicks I have with it. When it's doing those kind of things where it's the slogans are trying to be very dark and it says it comes off very punny, And that climax is something to be desired. Again, I won't say too much. A certain character gets injured, and throughout the entire ending, they somehow make it through. And then, at the very tail end, the injuries kick in, and it's like, "Oh, I survived all that, but this long hike, ah!" Good lord. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's worth checking out. Go see it, and until then, catch you later. Alright, that should probably do it for now. Maybe by those times.